The other thing is, let's not be quite so egocentric and think that they were worth the visit. We could be just a perfectly ordinary planet with some moderately advanced life forms. Maybe we have nothing of interest as far as they're concerned. Or maybe they keep waiting for the next generation of faster rockets and the next and the next. It's a bit like waiting to buy a new computer. You've just about made up your mind to buy one, and another one comes along which is a better spec. And you're looking at it and you think, yeah, I'll go for that. And then an even better one comes out, so you never actually buy one. Why no visitors again? Maybe they have merged with advanced IT. And again, Elon Musk is talking very seriously about this, about basically implanting some sort of artificial intelligence in our brains, or connecting our brains to it in some way. So you can take your pick from androids or cyborgs or robots or similar. Even Stephen Hawking was very wary of us going down that road, but it looks like you can't stop progress. Or the other way of looking at it is maybe they're so advanced that they wouldn't bother with us at all, any more than we would bother with a frog. And to try and get your head around that particular aspect, think how far life has evolved here in 10 million years, literally from pre-hominids, which were maybe just starting to walk upright, to where we are now. So if you were to look 10 million years into the future, what would life be like here on Earth if we survive? And 10 million years is a mere blink of an eye in cosmic terms. So if there's a civilization out there that's even, say, 10,000 years more advanced than us, would they be interested in us? As I say, we're not particularly interested in something with the level of a frog. So they might simply not be interested in our primitive intelligence and civilization at all. We could have a robot takeover. This was the famous Fyodor robot sent up to the ISS to perform various tasks. And they are progressing by leaps and bounds. They have not only incredible strength, but they now have incredible dexterity. They can pick up an egg without cracking it. And again, we're just at the very, very start of developing things like that. So a very advanced civilization might well have progressed to where basically that's the most advanced organism, may not be quite the right term, but the most advanced being on the planet. And then the other thing is that our evolution, again, as I was hinting earlier, has been exponential. In the last 100 years, we evolved more in terms of civilization and technology than the whole of the previous 1,000 years. And that was further than in the whole of the previous 100,000. What will humans be like in terms of ability and technology in another 1,000 years? If we survive that long. Sorry, I went a wee bit ahead of myself there. So that last paragraph there is what I was saying a moment ago. So if they're not going to come and visit, will they phone? Will they contact us by some other method? So we've been listening, we haven't heard anything. So what might be the reason for that? Maybe like us, they're all listening and no one is transmitting. Or maybe they sent a signal 100 years ago and we simply didn't have the instruments and the technology to pick it up. And those signals have now raced past us and are heading on out elsewhere in the universe. Maybe we're listening at the wrong frequency. And maybe radio is totally out of date in the cosmos. I mean, we've been using it for what, 120, 130 years maybe. And it's just, more or less at the limit of what we can do. So they may be using much more efficient light forms such as lasers or even gamma rays, which can communicate a lot more information in any given sort of signal packet. So radio may not be the most efficient way to search for any signals from elsewhere. The reason we do it is that the radio window, as we call it, is the main area where we could get signals through the Earth's atmosphere. Apart from things like sending telescopes up into space, where you can use gamma rays and X-rays. And you could use light, but again, light gets distorted as it comes through the atmosphere. So radio may well not be the most appropriate way to be searching. Another thing is, why would we transmit? I remember back a long time ago, whenever a signal was sent out to the star cluster M13 in Hercules, which is about 100,000 stars in it, somebody thought, well, there's bound to be at least one civilization somewhere among those 100,000 stars. And people are saying, what if they're antagonistic or warlike, well, there's no particular reason to worry in that case because it's about 60,000 light years away. So the signal hasn't even gone a tenth of a percent of the distance to the cluster, and it'll be the same length of time before it comes back. But it is a serious point. A lot of people have said, if we look at our own civilization here on Earth, the story has been of every more advanced civilization eventually ends up conquering the lesser ones. That has been the story of colonization throughout the history of the Earth. The more powerful civilization takes over. And if we send a signal and some more advanced civilization out there says, yes, that looks like a nice planet, we can deal with those humans quite easily, let's go there. And we don't necessarily want that. So they may also think that we're not quite mature enough as a civilization. And when you look at what's happening around us on planet Earth, from America to France to Russia, China, and so on, you might well agree with them. Or they may simply want to be left alone. Maybe they're too busy surviving in their own environment, which is a situation we may find ourselves in not too far in the future, with a hugely growing population and limited resources and the problems of climate change. Or maybe they're too busy communicating with other much more advanced civilizations and they can't be bothered with ignoramuses like us. Maybe they're too busy fighting each other, the Klingons versus the Borgs, or whatever other alien group you want to pick there. But as I said a moment ago, that's what humans have been doing for the last few thousand years, if not longer. Or maybe it's a culture or a religious thing. Thou shalt not attempt to communicate with any other planets, or thou shalt be cast into the fiery furnace, or their equivalent of that. The other thing is the timing problem. We've been broadcasting intelligence signals at a reasonable power for about 50 years. But will we still be doing that in another 150 years, or will radio then be obsolete? This, by the way, is just ordinary, our own communications by radio and TV and so on, not in terms of sending out a deliberate signal. But what we're broadcasting is basically leaking out into space whether we like it or not. So that's what this particular part is about. So even if we're still doing that in another 200 years, which is unlikely, we'll probably be doing everything by fiber optic or something like that. That's a total of only 250 years in the total possible time scale of billions of years. And if a nearby civilization reached our state of development 50,000 years ago and broadcast radio signals for 250 years from a distance of, say, 100 light years away, the last of those radio signals would have passed us 49,750 years ago. And even if they were broadcasting for a total of 10,000 years, the signals would have passed us about 40,000 years ago. So the timing problem is a very, very important one. Basically, we need another civilization in our reasonable vicinity in our part of the Milky Way to be broadcasting almost continuously for us to have any chance of picking it up. Or maybe it's a combination of all those. So what about actual travel? Say in 1,000 years we have the technology to build a big spaceship capable of 10% of the speed of light, 30,000 kilometers per second. At the moment, we're lucky to get about, in round figures, 30,000 kilometers per hour. Okay, so this would be a quantum leap forward. And say we think that there's a life at a planetary system about 100 light years away. That means a journey time of about 1,000 years. Would we go? Who would fund a mission to go? The cost of that could be 20% of a superpower's total GDP. Would they actually allocate that amount of money to go on what could be a wild goose chase? Or would we need some world federation to agree to fund it? And even then, would they say, we have enough problem looking after our own people here on Earth in terms of feeding and water and so on. So it's not a given that even if we have the technology to do that, that we would actually do it. And that could be exactly the same sort of situation for some other civilization. Another thing is, why go? Who would volunteer for probably what would be a one-way trip and would spend that mostly in hibernation? You'd simply go mad if you didn't, basically, being cooped up in the spaceship for that length of time. And even if you're in hibernation, what are going to be the psychological effects of such a long journey? You think You go on board the spacecraft, you make sure you're on the right track, and somehow or other you're put into hibernation, and you know that you're going to be lying there for maybe 100, 200, 300 years, and will then be woken up at the end of it. Who would look forward to that? What would you think? You know, will I be the same person? Will I be mad if I wake up again? There's also major physiological effects, and we're aware of that even in the relatively short duration of the flights that we have around the Earth. Muscle wastage, heart debility, bone loss, deterioration of the vestibular system, which affects your balance, and so on. Again, forget about the science fiction, for all these spacecraft somehow have artificial gravity without any sign of how that gravity actually works. The only sensible way to do it is to have a rotating spaceship like they had in 2001, A Space Odyssey. But you know, nobody's actually come up with a sensible way of doing that on a large scale. Can be done, but it hasn't been done yet, except in the film. The other thing is, what did they do when the crew got there? What reception would they get? Would the inhabitants shoot first and ask questions later? In fact, what would be the point? Would you not simply do your communication by some means that travels at the speed of light, such as radio or laser or whatever? Would the journey actually be worth it? And the answer, in my opinion, at the moment anyway, is no. Another thing is that the aliens are silent because they're all dead. The universe is probably filled with habitable planets, and many scientists think that there should be teeming with aliens. But an awful lot of astrobiologists say that advanced life on other planets, and indeed on planet Earth, would likely to be brief and become extinct very quickly. And by very quickly, we're talking about maybe tens of thousands of years, maybe 100,000 years. But again, that's just a blink of an eye in terms of the life of the galaxy. So new life would probably die out due to runaway heating or cooling on their fledgling planets. We don't know, but that is certainly a possibility. So is ET life short-lived? A plausible solution to Fermi's paradox, say researchers, is a near universal early extinction, they name the Gaia bottleneck, so it doesn't even get to the point of being advanced. The vast majority of fossils in the universe will be from extinct microbial life, not from multicellular species such as dinosaurs or humanoids that take billions of years to evolve. But it's happened once on Earth, we know that, obviously, so it could happen elsewhere, but maybe not as often as we think. So simple microbial life may well be common, but that's not going to be able to communicate with us. Brian Cox, whom we all know and love, and can't afford to go to his lectures, he believes he knows why we haven't found aliens. He thinks that any sort of intelligent life is destroying itself before it evolves. The technology that allows power but produces greenhouse gases or nuclear weapons may destroy civilizations within a few thousand years, like us. I have a slight query on that, in that it's unlikely to destroy all life. And if you have any life still remaining on the planet, then it will start the evolutionary process again. But it can take, excuse me, it could take quite a long time.